hot to.
You gotta put like an emphasis on it, like to.
If you're a guy in your 20s and you don't have a Lamborghini, you should actually sit down and have like a serious discussion with yourself.
I'm a very social introvert, so I could vibe with anyone. Like
that makes perfect sense. Well, I'm a smart retard as well.
Weird. Sprinkles are literally just sugar, right? So, how do they have flavors?
Because I love my mom. I want her to come. I don't know if this is weird to say, but I want my mom to have flawless experiences.
Podcasts have been around for what seems like forever now. They first began in the year of 2003, way before the launch of YouTube in 2005 or Spotify in 2008. They were made available for everyone in June of 2005 on Apple Music. However, despite this, there were not a lot of people that were making them, nor were there a lot of people who cared enough to actually consume them. They were just there until the early 2010s, when none other than Joe Rogan himself began a podcast named The Joe Rogan Experience. This saw a massive boost with the popularity of podcasts, and ever since then, everyone on the internet has a podcast now. Your YouTube channel gets big enough, start a podcast. You don't have a YouTube channel, start a podcast. Have the worst opinions known to man, start a podcast. Bored and don't know what to do with the rest of your life, it's okay, man. Just start a podcast. Everyone from teachers, self-improvement gurus, children, and for some strange reason, rappers, all started a podcast. It has become such a trend in recent years that anybody who wants to start one, and even all the people who don't need a podcast, have a podcast. There are so many podcasts, man. Call Her Daddy, Huberman Lab, On Purpose, Crime Junkie, The Journal, Heavyweight, Supernatural, Cold Cases. We could go on all night, bro. There's even a podcast called ASMR Boyfriend. Don't know how to feel about Game Theory has a podcast. Oh, it's just their YouTube videos re-uploaded onto Spotify. Never mind. Now that we have established that pretty much everyone has a podcast, the bigger question is why? Well, there are about 4 main reasons as to why I believe everyone would start a podcast of their own. 1, they have a passion for it. 2, money, of course. 3, it's easy. And 4, people think that they are way more special than they actually are. For the people that start a podcast purely out of love and passion are typically the ones that will make sure that they add some kind of substance and value into it, either to make it really entertaining enough for people to stick around and watch more of it, or make it educational enough for others to take something out of it every single time they tune in. But unfortunately, they are the ones that are usually not recognized by the masses of people because they are just surrounded by a lot of bad podcasters. Then we have those that start a podcast only for the money, knowing that these things makes them money. For them, it's kind of just a meaningless cash grab and nothing more. It isn't a way for them to help, educate, or even entertain others, but only exist because they know that it'll benefit them in making the money that they want. If there was no money in podcasts, I guarantee you that over 70-80% of the podcasts that we see online now would not exist if there was no money in it. These type of podcasts typically come from the self-improvement, hustle culture, and even the alpha male niches. Kind of like all these red-pilled alpha male podcasts that you would see all over your TikTok feed. They don't really care about what they are doing at all. They just want to do it because they know it'll make them money. Now, admittedly, there are some good podcasts out there in those areas that do want to legitimately help the people that follow them. But there are just so many bad ones out there. It almost seems as though the good ones are basically non-existent. The difference between them is really massive. Then we have those that start a podcast because they had one interesting conversation with their friends, and then one of them suggested that, oh, we should start a podcast, and then everyone else just agreed to it because, you know, it seems like it would be a lot of fun, plus it's super easy, right? Like, how difficult can it be to make a podcast? The reason that they do it is because they believe that it'll be easy, and fame and money as well. So they believe that all they need is a couple of cameras, decent sounding microphones, a good enough setting and Wi-Fi, and they're good to go. They have 1 to 2 hours worth of conversation, say some of the most out of pocket things known to man, upload it on YouTube and Spotify, clip some of the things that they said, upload it onto Instagram and TikTok, sit back, watch the followers come in, and pretty soon we'll become rich and we'll be famous all at the same time. And then these people either very quickly realize how difficult it is to grow a podcast and give up before ever reaching perhaps maybe 100 episodes, or they don't ever stop doing it and will continue growing their brand and their podcast, but will soon only become to be known for the clips that they upload as short form content on Instagram and on TikTok, and will soon be known as TikTok podcasts. And while we're on the topic of people who have podcasts but don't need one, or at least shouldn't have one, we gotta talk about the Hawk Tour girl, man.
Oh, you gotta give him that hawk tour and spit on that thing. You get me?
Why does she have a podcast? Why does she have a podcast? Like, out of all the people in the world that could have started a podcast during this time, why does she have one? It sounds like I'm hating, but I just want to know why she started a podcast from saying
That hawk tour.
you could have done anything else to get that bag. You could have sold a product, you could have started a show, you could have made content around your meme or whatever it is. You could have done anything else, but a podcast? Really? A podcast? And I'm like, just like anybody else, I'm really curious. How does she have over 200,000 subscribers over there? How?
That hawk.
What do they even talk about there?
Can't do it as good as
Do it.
You do it.
No, you do it.
Hot to.
There you go.
You gotta put like an emphasis on it, like tuh. You know, like really. Yeah. Say it. All right, all together.
Hot to.
Hawk tuh.
Hot to.
Say it aggressive, like
Hot
really.
to.
After careful consideration, and after watching the clip that you all just saw, I would just like to formally apologize to the Hawk Tour girl, Haley, Hawk Tour girl. I want to be on the podcast. I really want to be on the show. That was probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest piece of content that I've ever seen in my entire life. Although I will say that there are some really good podcasts on YouTube and on Spotify. It's not all bad ones. A lot of creators clearly do still care about making good content when it comes to podcasts, with the podcast either being really funny or really helpful or really wholesome all at the same time. The sad thing is that unfortunately a lot of these podcasts either don't grow quickly enough for the creators to continue staying on the project and continue grinding on them, or they are left behind in a sea of bad podcast and bad podcast creators. And for the ones that do manage to make it really big, they're the ones that really stand out above the rest because of how different they are and the type of value that they bring to the people that watch the shows. But overall, the main point of this entire video is to highlight how we just don't have enough podcasts in the world, to be honest. We don't. We need more. The next time that I go on TikTok, I better see the whole algorithm filled with clips from podcasts. The next time that I open YouTube, 80% of my video recommendations better be a podcast. Because there aren't enough in the world, man. We need more. Oh, and Haley, a Hawk Tour girl.
Give him that hawk tour.
I really want to be on the show. I just want to be on the show. Please bring me on the show.
Give him that hawk tour.
Because I love my mom. I want her to come. I don't know if this is weird to say, but I want my mom to have flawless experiences.
Give him that hawk tour.
Hot to.
There you go.
You gotta put like an emphasis on it, like tuh. Give him that hawk tour.
One more thing, if you've watched this whole video from start to finish, and you as a viewer are actually considering of making a podcast of your own, not because you want money or fame or anything like that, but instead you want to do it because you have a passion for it, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. I'm not stopping you. Whatever it is that you want to do, whatever dream that you want to chase, go ahead and chase that dream, and don't let anybody, don't let your parents, don't let your friends, don't even let YouTubers that you look up to or YouTubers that you've watched for the very first time stop you in doing whatever it is that you want to do with your life. If you want to make a podcast because you believe that you have something to offer and it's something that you love and really enjoy doing, or you think you will enjoy doing, even during the hard times, even during the trials and tribulations that you'll go through, you will enjoy every moment of it.